5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Yesterday we went to a funeral, and the funeral was for the child of, I think that would have been my great nephew, Robin, my nephew's
Yes.
my nephew's grandson.
Yes.
Right, my nephew's grandson. So whatever that makes him, a little baby.
5 months old.
Never left the hospital. Was born premature. And how old did he live?
He was 5 months.
5 months. And the mom and the dad of the...
well, he would have been 5 months yesterday.
Okay, right.
He was born on the 13th and buried on the 13th.
So the mom and the dad, they were there at the funeral, and they were talking, and they said a couple of profound things, and I completely think that they were right. One of the statements was that the mother felt like she had a hug from her little son. Keep in mind the baby was premature born, never really got to be very big, and they were able to hold the child for those 4.5 months, whatever it was that the baby lived.
Yeah, he was still in an incubator, but they let him out.
But she felt like he hugged her just before leaving for heaven or wherever we go when we die. And you and I have had conversations with so many people because of it's kind of a luxury being, or a privilege, I guess is a better word, of being able to speak to people like this who've had these experiences. And in our own lives, we've felt, it's kind of hard to even say what it is, but it's like, wow, did I just smell the perfume of my mother, or did I just see her face like in the corner of my eye or something? You know, it's kind of weird, you know, and you feel, or you'll see a note. Oh, I'll tell you a great one that happened to me. I got out of my car one time. I can't remember what I was thinking about, but I was thinking about something that had to do with my mom. And I got out of the car. It was rainy. It was dark, and in the grass there was a rectangle, and it was a piece of paper. So I said, "What is that?" So I picked it up. I go into the house. Now I'm in the light, and I could see that it was an old Easter card that my mother made me. How it ended up on the lawn was a mystery, unless I had it in the car somehow and it just fell out. But it said whatever the words were in the card spoke to me at that moment. And I apologize, I don't remember what it was, but it was like my mother giving me a message at that moment. On the phone, talking about having the privilege. When you hear Deanna Emberly Bailey's story, you will be wanting to just hug her and say, oh my gosh, you went through so much. Her 2 children died, 12-year-old Solon and 10-year-old Liam. They died from a fire, it says here, engulfed by a deadly house fire on Christmas morning of all days. 12-year-old Solon and 10-year-old Liam Bailey succumbed to smoke and leave their bodies on earth below. So their mother has written, Deanna is on the phone, and she wrote a book called Crossing the Horizon. And it sounds like it's talking about them, you know, seeing us here and seeing the other people that loved them here. Demonstrating love's unstoppable ability to connect us forever to those we cherish. I absolutely believe that is what happens. I'm not a Bible scholar. I don't know how to answer any of your questions if you're a non-believer, but I just believe that. So, Deanna, good morning, Deanna. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
So a couple of simple questions. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, you are.
And where are you? That's my other simple question.
I'm in Vermont.
In Vermont?
Yep, I'm outside of Burlington, Vermont. Yep.
It's a beautiful place.
It is beautiful. It's lovely weather today. So.
When did you lose your children? Which Christmas was this?
This was Christmas 2009. We went down to visit family in Kentucky for the holiday, and we were there over the span of 4 days, and to cross Christmas morning, and then head home 2 days later. And we never got to come home with the boys because they died in a fire that broke out Christmas morning.
My goodness.
Yeah, it was very trying.
Did you feel their presence? I mean, that's kind of a dumb question. Forgive me for asking it, but the book sort of talks about this, right?
Yes, actually, the book. I should probably explain to you how the book came about, because I never intended to write a book. I started writing. Well, basically, the fire occurred. I was in the fire. My husband was in the fire. We were able to escape. We were we were talking with our sons. We couldn't get to them. It was horrific, and we lost them. And then I returned home, and I was struggling with images continually from the fire. And my therapist said, most likely you're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. If you don't have the disorder, you certainly have the symptoms. We need to find a way to help you. So I went through intense therapy for quite a while, just so I could even start managing life again, for a couple months. And sort of by the end of her training me in this process that I could use to pull myself back from the fire mentally, she said, after I had a pretty good handle on that, she said, I think it's important for you to imagine, because I'd been stuck still in the fire mentally. I hadn't started picturing them in the life beyond, or in that experience they were already having elsewhere, and I just pictured them in this horrible situation. So she said, I really think you need to do something creative to imagine what that fire was like from the boys' perspective instead of your own. So I want you to either write a musical piece, or sit down at the piano, or sit down with your guitar, or whatever, or paint something. But during that time, I want you to be thinking about the fire from the boys' perspective, which was really hard for me to do.
That almost sounds like torture.
Are you crazy?
I know.
Yeah.
That sounds like she's asking you. Your therapist was your therapist lady? I think you said she, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a she.
She was asking you to do something that would be torturous.
Yes, it was very difficult. Her rationale, and she was spot on in the end. Her rationale was, this was, for your children. Yes, there was emotional turmoil, because prior to them passing out from the smoke inhalation, because that's generally how people die in fires. If they die from smoke inhalation, I had horrors of them, dealing with heat and whatnot, but it was really the smoke that took their lives. So anyway, she said for them, it was quick. It was quick. They passed out, and they weren't in pain, and you need to internalize that idea. And that, so basically, once I did sit down finally 6 weeks later after asking me to do something, I decided I was going to write, because the boys and Chris and I used to read all the time. So every night before bed we'd be reading. So I just decided I was going to imagine them and write, and just write whatever came to mind. So that's actually how the book started. Was I had this little healing exercise, and I started writing, and I got them out of the fire. I took one of my son's perspectives, so it's written in his voice, in his mind. I was trying to be in his mind. Got him out of the fire, with his brother out of the fire too, and they moved on to their afterlife. And then I decided the next day I needed to write from my other child's perspective. So I wrote alternating back and forth, because it felt so good to me. I felt really close to them as I wrote. I felt the connection you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Of I started getting signs, and started getting the sense that they were actually with me as I wrote. So I craved it, and I just kept writing back and forth. And so it's this tale of their afterlife, and them trying to figure out, because they were tortured by the separation from Chris and I. They would come back and try to help us.
You hinted earlier, without saying so, that you are musical and a songwriter, by telling us about the therapist suggesting that you write with your guitar or your piano. And what that makes me wonder is, because people who can tap into that other world thing where music comes from, or that other world thing where writing comes from, or that other world thing where all creative ideas come from, I know it sounds kind of flippant to say it that way, but everybody we talk to, all writers, everybody says, I don't, James Taylor, I was listening to an interview the other day, he said, I don't think I write them, I just think I'm the first one to hear them. And so since you tap into that in a creative sense, do you think you actually tapped into to them, and do you think they really told their story?
Yes, I do. I think they told their story through me.
Wow.
Do you think that your writing helped Chris, or did he do something on his own?
Initially, we were both doing things on our own to try to manage and get through. And anybody who deals with a loss, each individual is going to deal with it differently. So he was definitely doing things on his own. I was doing things on my own. We were doing shared things and going to grief counseling together. But the writing, he wasn't really ready to read the writing until, and I wasn't really ready to share the writing with anybody until we were almost a year, before the first anniversary is when I started sharing it with people. It was such a personal thing. It was just me, like, sitting in my room grieving and letting my soul pour out.
Okay, we've had guests who talk to us about, and you have to suspend any disbelief in order to have this conversation, but the disbelief would come from the idea that you could actually take a pen or maybe a word processor or a computer or something and write something, and somebody else is literally controlling what you write. So they call it, what did they call it?
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to think of the word.
Involuntary writing or controlled writing
like that,
or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like that?
Yeah, I don't know that. I didn't necessarily feel that was what was happening. I definitely felt the boy's presence when I was writing, and that's what I was craving, and that's why I kept going back to it. I didn't necessarily feel until a latter part of the tale. There came a time, which is about 2/3 of the way through, where I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, that this could be them writing through me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that they weren't necessarily directing every single word, but so
I got you.
There's a turning point in the story where I suddenly had this sense of like, whoa. It wasn't closure, but it was this sense of like, wow. I think I'm in a place where I can start wrapping up the tale. The other thing to know is I did not plan any of these ahead. I just sat down to write. I didn't plan what I was going to write before I sat down. I didn't reread what I wrote the day before. I just wrote. Did
what you wrote conflict with your own religious beliefs or support them? Or, I mean, did it, you know what I mean? One or the other, did it?
Yeah.
Really?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Before the trial, I was raised Catholic until about the age of 8. And my family, stepped away from the church. And so I didn't go to church much after that, all through college, even, through my marriage. We were married with a justice of the peace in an outdoor environment. And I just hadn't really been to church in enormously long amount of time. And interestingly enough, the day before the boys passed away, I had asked my stepmother, Chris's stepmother actually, whom we were staying with. I know she goes to church, so I said, I'd really like to go to church with you. That's okay. She said, sure. So we went, and that was beautiful. And so I had that experience like the night before the tragedy happened.
My goodness.
And I remember, standing outside of the raging house fire and screaming at God and telling him, you can't have them. And that's what told me that I needed to go back to church again, that I needed to find a way to connect again. And so it was that experience of like, I reached, I was, obviously I must believe in God if that's what I was doing.
Yeah, isn't that
and angry, So then I've gone back and, I reconnected with a Presbyterian church here that has just like saved me in so many ways. So
when you were writing, was there any part of that writing when you were writing in each of the voices of your son, did you actually write down the question, Mom, how come you and Dad couldn't save us?
Nope, I didn't write it down in the book. They knew it well. I felt like they knew it.
They knew it. They knew it.
They knew it because they knew what we were going through. They knew. Yeah.
Deanna, we have to take a little break, but we'll be back. Deanna Emberly Bailey is our guest. Her book is called Crossing the Horizon, Demonstrating Love's Unstoppable Ability to Connect Us Forever to Those We Cherish. What an optimistic message from such a horrendously tragic story, having lost 2 of her children, 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, in a Christmas morning fire while they went on a Christmas vacation from Vermont to Kentucky. My goodness. All right, we'll take a little break and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. It'll be partly sunny today with a thunderstorm around during the afternoon hours, high 90 to 94. Tonight, partly cloudy. There can be a thunderstorm in spots near the coast early on, low 73 to 77. Tomorrow, partly sunny. Watch out for an afternoon thunderstorm, high 89 to 93. Thursday, sunshine mixing with clouds with a couple of thunderstorms around, mainly during the afternoon hours, the high 88 to 92. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hi, Danny Warfel here. Get moving with Florida Credit Union's fast and easy loan approval process.
Let Florida Credit Union start up a new car loan for you today. No more waiting, hassles, or stop signs. You can even apply online. With a strong financial team behind you, you can enjoy great rates and fast approvals.
It's all about personalized service and a streamlined process.
Florida Credit Union, connecting your money to your life.
21 minutes after 11 o'clock. Deanna Emberly Bailey is on the phone. Her book is called Crossing the Horizon. It's a story, kind of like a memoir of her two sons who died in a fire, and it's their story after the fact, after they go to heaven or whatever we call that place we go to after we die. Deanna, I have a story I want to share with you.
Sure.
It's from another author. Her name is Judy Collier. She wrote a book called Quit Kissing My Ashes, and she lost her son. He was in his 20s, and he died in a car accident, and he was what? Kyle. Kyle was his name, yeah. And she was the wife of like a famous football coach or something in Louisiana or something,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so the reason I'm telling you this is because the story I'm going to tell you kind of made me wonder if I wasn't somehow a conduit or a messenger without knowing it. The book that she wrote did not arrive in time for the interview. So basically, I did not have a chance to really look at it. Same with your book, by the way. We didn't get your book, right?
Right.
Okay. The interview was on a Friday. The book actually arrived at the studio on a Saturday after the fact. And that's important because it tells you that I didn't know what was in the book. Mm-hmm. The Wednesday before this interview, there was a bird in my car.
Oh, goodness.
Robin had visited my house. I went out to wave goodbye. Okay, see you later. And I look over at my car as she's driving. I said, "What the heck is in my car?" And it was a bird in my car. All the windows were up. And there was a bird in my car. Now, I did have a cloth top, like a convertible car, and it was the top was up, but there was a little hole in the back. I don't know if a rat got to it. I don't know what got to it. But that's my logical explanation of how the bird got in the car. But there was a bird in the car, and the bird pooped on the steering wheel, and I had evidence that there was a bird in my car, because as soon as I opened up the door, the bird flew away, and I said, gosh, I wish somebody had seen this. Nobody saw the bird in my car. That was Wednesday. Friday morning, before I went to work, I went to take a shower. I was at that point in my life where I started to need eyeglasses. And I saw something in the bathtub. Now, I live in Florida, so snakes are not uncommon in Florida. But let me just assure you this. I never, ever saw a snake in my yard in this town that I lived in, Bellevue. And I certainly never saw a snake in my house. And this morning, I saw a snake in my bathtub. It was so small that I had to put my glasses on to see what it was, but it was indeed a snake. It was not a worm. It was a snake. Mm-hmm. Okay. All of you animal lovers, I'm sorry. I flushed it down the drain, but that's exactly what I did. Okay, so now you have the knowledge that on Wednesday before the interview, there was a bird in my car. On Friday morning before the interview, there was a snake in my bathtub. So now I'm doing this interview with this woman who wrote a book about her son dying, and how some of her friends said they had dreams where they were telling where he was in the dreams. She didn't have the dreams. The mom didn't have the dreams. The friends did. I think the sister did.
Yeah.
And they were saying to tell her, quit kissing my ashes, because she was kissing the urn where his ashes were kept on the mantle. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So then in the interview, she is telling me how Kyle told one of them in a dream that when you hear about, are you ready for this? When you hear about birds and snakes in places where they're not normally seen, you'll know I'm okay. When she let me tell you something. I am not making this, Deanna. You could look it up online. Look up what's her name again? Judy Collier. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When she said that to me, my mouth dropped open, and I was waiting for her to finish talking, and I said, "Oh my God, I swear to you, I am not making this up." Mm-hmm. and then I told her the story about the bird on Wednesday and the snake that morning. And then she like flipped out. I was like, you're kidding me. Because that was her sign. That was her sign that he was okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I was and
you were sending it to her.
And I got chills. And if you look, I don't know if she rewrote the book or added to the book, but somewhere online there's something. Yeah, I spoke to this guy on the radio, and and she became somewhat of a friend, actually. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think you're right. I think it's not just our imagination. There is an afterlife. I can't explain it, but
yeah. I feel that way very strongly as well.
So I took up some of your time. You should be the one talking, but I wanted to tell you that story. In writing this book, do you feel like you have a better understanding of what heaven is?
I certainly picture it in a way that I've described it, in the book. I don't know for certain that that's what the afterlife looks like. That's what came to me, and that's what I wrote, and maybe it is. That's what the boys.
So tell us, what did they?
Through me.
So what did they tell you that we can know?
Well, I basically, the very first field that they end up with, that the boys end up in is, it's actually pictured on the front of the book, which shows long, tall grasses kind of blowing in the breeze and beautiful, just really. A beautiful golden light, a warmth and a quality of light that is indescribable, really. It fills you with warmth and helps you feel like you're as safe as can be. So there are other places they end up going to. And those places are sort of from aspects of their life on Earth that came about up there. So, for example, there's like an enchanted castle they end up visiting in order to go to different places in their afterlife. That allows them to get where they need to go, including coming home, coming back to visit. They end up flying, because this is fantasy fiction, they ended up flying on animals they would have loved to be flying on.
Oh my gosh.
Dragons and, eagles actually are the first. Eagles are the ones that transport them back and forth most reliably. So they're also happy.
Well, that would be my choice.
Yes. So it's it's fantasy fiction, but there are aspects of it that I really believe are the way it would be in heaven. So for me, it enables me to imagine them happy, safe, connected to us still enjoying a lot of the things they enjoyed on Earth, just in a new form there. So.
Oh, you said that it happened in Chris's mom's house. How did she deal with that?
It actually was Chris's father's house. His parents are divorced, and it was his father's home and his father and stepmother's home. It was, as I'm sure anybody listening and you can imagine, really, really trying to have your home not only go up in flames, but also take the lives of your grandchildren. So they've worked hard to get themselves back. They didn't rebuild there or anything, but they're doing well, and they've reinvested in life and and have other grandchildren, and they're doing well. But they miss the boys. Everybody, all of us do.
Yeah, I think I think you are making everybody feel really good about anybody who's ever departed. I think your story is somehow reaching us all in a very, very positive way. The book is called Crossing the Horizon. How do we get the book?
It's available on Amazon, Amazon.com, Crossing the Horizon, Deanna Bailey. That's the easiest way to acquire it. It is available in some local bookstores, but those are not as easily available as Amazon.
Okay.
Probably the way to go.
And your website is deannabailey.com?
Deanna E.
It's Deanna E. Bailey.
Oh, Deanna E. Bailey. Okay. And Robin actually already has that on the guest list. So if you're driving and you can't write it down or just don't quite understand what we're saying, just go to or call us up later on or look on the Facebook page. It'll be everywhere, including this interview. Deanna Emberly Bailey, thank you so much for what you've done, and you've given us all hope. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll be back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Harsh words from the Israeli Prime Minister on the nuclear deal with Iran just announced this morning.
This is a bad mistake. of historic proportions.
Benjamin Netanyahu saying that Israel is not bound by the deal, which is meant to keep Iran from producing enough material for an atomic weapon for at least 10 years.
In return, Iran gets relief from sanctions worth billions of dollars. But the US saying that won't happen until Iran begins curbing its activities. And if there's a breach of the deal, sanctions can be reinstated.
Fox Radio's Simon Owen. After 11 weeks, closing arguments about to get underway in the Colorado movie theater massacre.